So let's talk about hooks. I would like to present you the new way of coding complex components in React. But before talking about the trends, I would like to make sure everyone remembers how do we work with stateful components, with classes. So I'm essentially revisiting what we did on the, I believe, 13th of May. So imagine I want to have a component, and my component is going to be called, it's going to be a class click counter. So I want to have a button where I can track how many times the user has clicked in a button, yeah, for instance. So you remember the syntax, extends react.component, and then eventually I will call the component, of course, so click counter. So guys, because there is nothing new in here, so can you help me to build the click counter component? Okay, constructor, and then super, yeah, cool. Render, nice, return, wow. So, all right, let's put a div, and then inside of the div, let's have a button. In a second. All right, so I'm gonna present that. The user has clicked counter times. Actually, it should be this.state.counter. So now, can anyone apart from Vicky tell me how can I complete this exercise? All right, this.state, what else? Is that line correct? Line number 8? Why not? It's a colon, that's correct. Remember, this is an object, right? So we separate the key and the value with a colon. Cool, what else? What do you think, guys? Will that work? That will throw an error. The error will be counter is not defined. Well, we could create a function, but what if I don't want to create a function? All right, curly braces. Remember, when we do set the state, so generally speaking, we pass curly braces because we specify which properties we want to update. And then what else? All right, what do you think, guys? So we try it, see if Vicky is right or wrong. All right, so let's refresh the page. Awesome. It works like a charm. Brilliant, brilliant, fantastic, fantastic. So that's the way you can build a counter component using React. I mean, if I were you, that's correct, yeah, it works, but obviously line number 15, that's a bit complex. Someone was suggesting we could create a function. That's fine, we can do that. We could create a function called, I don't know, increment counter, for instance. So now we can run that operation. I think now the code is a bit cleaner because we are improving the semantics. Yeah. So if that line is hard to understand, at least now, because it's encapsulated into a function, the function tells you what the hell that line number 12 is doing. It is incrementing the counter. So don't forget, guys, that one of the maybe not that obvious reasons why we should create functions is because of readability. Yeah, it helps to understand your algorithm. Cool, yeah, that's the way you can create a stateful component using a class. Any questions so far? That's a good question. Look, I'll tell you something. A couple of weeks ago I gave up. I said I'm gonna give up forever adding breakpoints with Chrome because it's failing more than I don't know Brexit plans. But the thing is, I got guys, the latest version of Chrome. I had a quick look to the improvements, and it looks like they've done some work on the breakpoints. So they've done some efforts. I have no idea. I don't know. No, listen, I haven't touched breakpoints since the last time we tried together. So, but hey, I think it's good to try from time to time. I'm quite pessimistic, so I don't think that's gonna work. Actually, if that works, this is gonna be a fantastic positive surprise. But I don't think that's gonna work. But anyway, well, let's try, right? So, app.js, and then let me zoom it in a bit. And now, so for instance, let me add a breakpoint on line number 8. Oh, you see, they changed that. I didn't see that. Now it's the same as VS Code. It's not green anymore. Now it's red. All right, let me try to refresh. If it works, I'll continue thinking about using the tool. If it doesn't work, I'll give up. All right, so if I refresh the page, no, you see, that was very romantic. It's not working. It's not working. So, well, I mean, it should obviously work, right? But it isn't working. Anyway, so back to your question. Imagine that we can add breakpoints, right? So where do you want me to add breakpoints, Vicky? 15 should be 16, actually. Yeah. React doesn't re-render. Oh, that sounds a bit aggressive. Hmm? I don't know. Tell me, guys, if I refresh the page, I'm not gonna click any button. I'm just gonna refresh the page. Imagine I'm your version of Google Chrome with working breakpoints. So if I refresh the page, can anyone tell me where the code is gonna stop? 8. So that's Elena. 8 and yeah, I just refresh. I'm not gonna click on any button. 8 and then what else? What do you think, guys? Do you agree with Elena or not? No. So Aaron has a different opinion, right? Aaron, go for it. But the thing is, Aaron, I'm not gonna click on the button. So why the hell the browser is gonna increment the counter if I'm not clicking on the button? No, I'm not click. But I didn't say. I never. I'm not gonna click on the button. I'm not gonna click on the button. Say it again. 11 and same as Elena. All right. Does anyone disagree with these guys? That's correct. So first of all, we set up the constructor once, and then we render once. That's correct. And now I'm gonna change the exercise. I'm gonna refresh the page, and then I'm gonna click on the button twice. Tell me the full sequence. Remember, refresh the page and click on the button twice. You, Aaron? So wait. Vicky said 8, 16, 12, 12. All right. Cool. Actually, Aaron got the second headshot of the day. Aaron, you know you are in the leadership of the board challenge of the week, right? Yeah. Yeah. So the first two, are obvious, right? So the first two means we are refreshing the page, so constructor, then render. And now I click on the button first because I'm clicking on the button. I'm running the increment counter function. So it means I stop on line 12. And then what happened, guys? What are the consequences of calling the set state method? And re-render. That's correct. You did the counter and then you re-render. That's correct, Elena. So that means that we run line number 16 again because we re-render. And then because I'm going to click again on the button, well, we repeat the process, right? We go to line number 12, and then because we call set state, we update the counter, and then we re-render to display the newer value of the counter. So that's fully correct. Anything else? No? All right, so that's the classic, if that makes any sense. I mean, you know, guys, when talking about JavaScript, classic JavaScript could mean something that was created 2 days ago. Well, that's not that aggressive, but you know, in JavaScript, things tend to change very quickly. So that's the historical way of creating components with React. But now, starting from a couple of years ago, or even less than that, you can do something different. So probably we need a bit of programming background here. So you know that classes, this is a class. Class is a very important data structure when talking about programming languages. And classes are vital when talking about languages like, I don't know, Java or C Sharp, yeah, many others. Yeah, I mean, most, not sure if most, but many important programming languages support classes. However, JavaScript, originally speaking, didn't support classes. Don't forget something. JavaScript is it'll be 25 years old in December 2020. So since 1995 to 2015, classes were not supported. But what happened in 2015? In 2015, we got ES6 release, a new version of ECMAScript, if you remember, where classes were introduced by the first time. Many historical JavaScript developers, they said, hey, what the hell, I don't like classes. I've been living without classes for 20 years. So, you know, it feels a bit weird. Why JavaScript started to support classes? Because many historical backend developers move progressively to JavaScript because JavaScript was the sexy boy in the building. So everyone wanted to play with JavaScript. Because of that, obviously, if I'm a Java developer and I move to JavaScript, I will miss two things. First of all, classes, and then types. So, you know, with types, we got TypeScript, so fair enough, we can deal with that. And with classes, now we can play with them as a way to satisfy the appetite of historic backend developers. But still, the thing is, even though we support classes, even though many of the most popular frameworks and libraries are created by former backend developers, still, the historical JavaScript developer community, it has still a lot of power, yeah? Because they are against, not against classes, but you know, they are not a big fan of classes. They tend to not to use them as much as possible. And there are multiple reasons. On week number 8, we'll talk about one of the most important ones, which is why the hell that keyword means this. That's one of the most complicated things to handle in JavaScript, lexical this. We'll talk about that in the last week of the bootcamp, yeah, towards the end of June. For now, what historical developers of JavaScript try to do is not to use classes, as simple as that. So in JavaScript, historically speaking, we didn't have classes, but we got functions. And you know that in React, you can create components by typing a function. Yeah. So the idea was, can we satisfy the same problem, yeah, of dealing with a state without using a state? And the answer is yes. That's why React created something called hooks, which is a bit weird. It's a bit mind-blowing. The first time you came across hooks, it's like, all right, so hooks are useful, for instance, to create a state as part of a stateless component. Feels a bit weird, yeah? Feels a bit weird. But once you get used to it, they are very smart. They are very smart. So let me show you how to use hooks. But before I show you how to use hooks, let's talk about the structuring. And you'll see in a minute why I'm talking about the structuring. I mean, you know how to use object structuring. We've been dealing with that hundreds of times, including yesterday in several exercises. But you know that when talking about the structuring, even though in the majority of the occasions we refer to it as object structuring, in reality we can also do array destructuring. So if I go to the list of fruits, which is apple, orange, and banana, if I have to do a job interview tomorrow and they ask me to write a list of 5 fruits, I will have big problems. So I'll try to think on a different list of items. And all right, so imagine I want to save the first fruit into a variable. I can do let first equals fruits of 0. Yeah, I can do these things. First, second, and third. I can do that. But guys, do you remember how can we solve the problem using array destructuring? Well, should be first, whatever, right? I'm trying to rewrite. I'm just trying to rewrite what I wrote about, and then what else? That's correct. Yeah. So that's what we call. I can do it. That's what we call array destructuring, which is the same principle as object destructuring. So when talking about hooks, we are going to use array destructuring. Why? Look, the first thing we need to do is on the first line of your component, or wherever you import React, you have to import something else called useState. Can anyone tell me what these curly braces mean here? It's part of the component, but React is the default, so it's exported as export default, and then React has a list of non-default exports. One of them is useState. Yeah? So now let's pay attention to the syntax. I'm going to create a constant, and look at the syntax. Counter, set counter equals useState 0. That line is the most important and difficult one to understand hooks, at least the basics of hooks, of course. Yeah? So what are we doing here? We are using a method called useState. That's the hook. Yeah? And that method returns an array with 2 elements. The first element is a variable. The second element, it's a method to update the variable. And also, as you may notice, as useState is a method, we are passing an argument. Can anyone figure out what that 0 means? That's correct, Vicky. That's the initial state of the counter. By default, counter is 0, which is equivalent to what we've done on line number 13. So now, the only thing we need to do is to pretty much replicate the HTML bit, but you'll find out that the code will eventually be simpler. I'm gonna first of all copy the HTML bit. I'm also gonna comment out the class, because otherwise, actually I can keep both. So click counter 1 and click counter 2. What else? So look, now we don't have to refer to this.state dot, because the variable is just called counter. So you see the code looks just simpler. And likewise, can anyone tell me, rather than this.increment counter, rather than this.setState, what should I write here on line number 9? Set counter. All right, and that's a method. And what's the value? No, wrong. No. Counter plus 1, correct. Counter plus 1. You see? So that code is equivalent to the code at the bottom. But can you guys see, probably if I zoom it out a bit, do you agree with me that the function approach is much simpler than the class. Yeah, they do the same. Actually, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna keep both components running side by side in parallel somehow, one after the other, whatever, because I want to make sure that that they actually run the same operation. So, oh look, now the constructor is working. It's like thank you for nothing. I added the breakpoint like 20 minutes ago, right? So it has a big hangover, the browser today. All right. No. Let me close that. I don't want to play with you, Google. I'm so sorry. All right, cool. You see, I got the first component. So that's the let me have a look. So click counter one. So the first one is the class. So that's following a chronological order. So that's the class and that's the hook. Yeah. So the class works and the hook works. So it's exactly the same behavior from a user point of view. But technically speaking, the function is much simpler. So I'm not just talking about the number of lines of code you have to write, which it's clearly shorter, it's more compact. It's also about, I don't know, it feels much more natural to me to create a variable counter and then increase it using a method set counter than dealing with this.state, this.setState. I don't know. It feels much simpler to use a hook than a class. Questions? That's a good question. That's a really good question. Technically speaking, functions or hooks are supposed to be equivalent to classes. So in theory, starting from today, you could use functions, you could use hooks all the time. So you could stop using classes. However, I'm going to tell you 2 reasons why you should keep working with classes from time to time. Reason number 1, even though hooks are very trendy, goes without saying, that's the future of React. If you land on a project, once you find a job, they are likely to be using classes. Maybe not on the new stuff, but I'm sure they will be using classes on the older stuff. Yeah, I mean, on the Codery platform, whatever I wrote before 2019 is written with classes. So you need the ability to deal with classes. Yeah, so that's the first reason. Short term, you're gonna have to maintain classes. So you definitely need to know how to use them. The second reason is hooks are great. However, there are some use cases scenarios where I don't necessarily believe that hooks scale really well. If your component is complex enough, at some point, hooks will become less readable, harder to maintain than classes. That's maybe a personal feeling. And another senior developer may argue, yeah, but if you got a very complex component, then you should refactor the component because you shouldn't have complex component. And that's right. However, even in that case, I came across some scenarios where dealing with hooks is complicated. Don't forget something. I'm here just presenting the basics of hooks. But what if I want to talk to the backend? I mean, guys, now shortly you will start working with the backend, right? You will start, fetching the list of movies from the backend and stuff like that. So at that time, I will invite you to create a class to solve your backend communication, and I will also invite you to, at some point, refactor the code using hooks. And even though in that particular use case scenario, hooks will be still okay, I came across some situations where hooks are not probably as readable as I would want. Yeah. Once again, that's just a personal feeling. Hopefully, you'll always find hooks the best approach, but just bear in mind that that may not be the case all the time. Don't forget, this is an intro to hooks. As part of the personal workshop that you are expected to run before the end of the bootcamp, I told you this morning that there will be a list of available topics, and one of these topics will be advanced hooks. I would love someone to present you know, a more complex scenario where we deal with hooks. Why? Don't forget something. Hooks are very trendy. So if you run a workshop about hooks, that workshop will be recorded. You know, companies will love to see how do you deal with hooks, how do you interact with them, how do you solve problems, all these type of things. Yeah. So if anyone is interested in running a workshop about advanced hooks, yeah, I'll be more than happy to support you. What else, guys? More questions? No? All right. So once again, I'm going to leave it here because I want you to start playing with hooks. If no one wants to talk about advanced hooks, which will be a big pity, to be honest, but if no one wants to do that, I may run another workshop to present more complex use cases scenarios. But I want you, first of all, to play with them, to understand them, to work with the backend using hooks as well. That's important. And then we may talk about next steps. Anything else? No one, not a two. All right, guys. Yeah, someone? Okay, cool. I mean, I'm going to do something. I'm going to send you a list on Slack with potential topics. And once you get, yes, once you get the list, you know, first come, first serve. Whoever picks a topic, it will be booked and we'll find the date and everything. All right? Cool. Thank you very much, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.